The year is 1908. In Detroit, Henry Ford produces his first Model T. The Grand Canyon is declared a national monument. Teddy Roosevelt serves his last year in the White House. And in Greenville, South Carolina, Joe Piper launches a company that would literally cover the town. Joseph Avery Piper grew up in Durham, North Carolina. Born in 1878, Piper left school in 1892 after finishing the 8th grade to work in a tobacco plant. The extra money he earned helped send his 2 sisters and 2 brothers to college. In 1898, he began working in his father's roofing business, then moved on to work with roofing contractors in Charlotte, Shreveport, and New Orleans, where he learned an invaluable lesson.
He was working in New Orleans, and his boss took him to go measure a roof. A customer had called, a potential customer had called, and they went up on the roof and checked it over, and his boss looked around at the roof and he said, no, said, we're just too busy to handle this job. And on the way back to the shop, Dad remembered they just didn't have any work, and he couldn't understand why. And then all of a sudden he thought, he doesn't know how to measure a triangular roof. And Dad, having finished the 8th grade, didn't know how to do a triangular roof either, but he decided right then it was time for him to do a little self-education.
Circumstances soon forced Piper to return home.
After his father died in 1905, he came back to Durham, and there he went in the roofing business in Durham for himself. And later he and his brother got together and they started Piper Roofing and Manufacturing Company. His brother, Bob Piper, went to Richmond and ran the branch in Richmond. But the textile plants were real active in South Carolina. They were moving south, and the company had more work in the Greenville area than it had anywhere else, so Dad left Durham, leaving his manager in charge, and opened up a branch in Greenville.
This third branch of the business opened in 1908, shortly after another milestone in Piper's life, his marriage to Mamie Howard. It was just after their honeymoon that the couple moved to Simpsonville to oversee the roofing of Woodside Mill. While there, the booming economic climate and overall civic hospitality convinced Joe and his bride to remain in the area for good, even as, years later, the economy began to turn.
There was a financial panic and they had to close the operation. And when they started up again, the banker came down to see Dad and talked to him about how he was going to operate and how he was going to start the company up and how he would handle it. And he went through the operation, and when he came to the list of employees, he wanted to know what the rates were, what he was being paid, what wages they were making, and he says, okay, we'll start off by getting rid of those high-priced people, and says, you can just operate off the cheap guys he's got. And of course, that's exactly the wrong thing to do. If you're gonna make any money, you've got to have your good people. If you're gonna operate, you got to have that kind of work. But anyhow, Dad finally told him, he says, now look, because I'll take care of this thing if you want me to, and then I'll pay it back. But if you don't want me to handle it, I'm just going to close the door and walk out of here, and I'm through. You can handle it. Well, after the man thought a little bit, he decided to let him go, and of course, Dad made a success out of it, handling it the way he knew how to work the job.
This determination to do things right carried Piper through several ups and downs over the years, while his partner Mamie remained his greatest ally.
She was very much a part of the company. She loved it, and they were a real team.
In fact, when the company reorganized as J.A. Piper Roofing Company in 1914, Joe served as secretary-treasurer and Mamie was named president, a role she held for 30 years. Piper Roofing's offices were originally located on West McBee Avenue, and by 1915, Joe Piper began running ads in the local paper under the heading Jap Says. Within a few years, the company moved to the corner of River and Court Streets, establishing one of the South's largest sheet metal plants. During the First World War, Piper Roofing expertise in metalwork resulted in government contracts, as well as a chance for Joe to engage in some creative solutions to get the job done.
the company received a contract for latrines, and it turned out that they got the contract for both Camp Sevier and Camp Wadsworth for latrine boxes, roof jacks, and some other materials. And during that period of time, there was, as you can imagine, there was a shortage of labor because of the draft of people in service. And they were having difficulty finding material, but they were next door to the fire station. So after conversations with the fire chief, the company offered work for the firemen, the off-duty firemen, to help put this, put these materials together and to make deliveries, so they could make these deliveries of the material for the two Army camps.
After the war, Piper put his creativity to work by developing a metal shingle to use in place of the wooden shingles and tin roofs that dominated residential construction at the time.
And of course, the wood shingles were a tremendous fire hazard. A wood shingle house that catches on fire would release brands that would set the other houses in the neighborhood on fire. The tin roof was expensive and difficult to lay, but the metal shingles were separate and similar in manner of laying as the current asphalt shingles.
By the time of the Great Depression, Captain Joe, as he was by then known, had already served a term as president of Greenville's Chamber of Commerce and had long been attending conventions of the United Roofing Contractors Association. In 1932 and 1933, he served as that organization's president and became responsible for holding the association together during difficult financial times. Meanwhile, Mamie Piper made her own contributions to the industry.
She was an artist, and she helped develop a special shingle roofing. At that time, we did residential shingles as well as commercial, like we do only today. And she used her talents to develop an architectural style shingle called the Cool Blend shingle. She would work with the architects and with the owners and on the field out there and tell them where they should put the lighter tiles as opposed to the darker ones, and to get the full effect of the clay tile.
From these artistic shingles to basic tar and gravel roofs, J.A. Piper already had an unmatched reputation for quality and service. Apart from the many textile mills roofed by the company, more unusual jobs came their way, such as the copper work at St. Mary's Catholic Church, and in 1926, a custom megaphone used to announce the legendary Jack Dempsey-Gene Tunney fight to a thrilled crowd assembled at Textile Hall. And local architects regularly relied on their expertise.
During the early period, we would call a piper and ask them, what is the most appropriate roof for this job? And we describe the job, and they'd recommend something. We usually take that recommendation.
In 1943, Joe Piper helped organize the Carolinas Roofing and Sheet Metal Contractors Association. His vision included drawing younger members into the group to keep the association fresh and vital. In 1947, the National Roofing Contractors Association honored Joe with its Distinguished Service Award. The very next year, in appreciation of his legacy and dedication to that association, he was again honored when the Distinguished Service Award was renamed the J.A. Piper Award, a name it retains to this day. In 1958, tragedy struck as fire swept through their downtown plant. But with their business continuing to grow, Piper Roofing chose to construct brand new facilities off White Horse Road rather than rebuild. They remain in their Commerce Road location today. As important as Joe and Mamie were to the company's original success, their lasting legacy continues through their children and grandchildren, who have steered Piper Roofing into a new century.
I grew up with it around the dinner table. That was not necessarily always a topic of conversation, but it was part of our life.
Well, we call it tar. They got tar in their blood mighty early.
Son Joe H. Piper led the company from 1948 until his death in 1971, while another son, Sam, not only served as president of the company, but in 1983 also won the J.A. Piper Award. Today, the company continues under the leadership of a new generation of Pipers. Grandsons Rodney and Joe Piper serve as president and secretary-treasurer, keeping the family tradition alive.
Piper is the oldest roofing company, as far as I know, in this area. And I used to call Joe Piper's father and ask him for a recommendation. I always got good advice from them, and they had the experience and the knowledge to answer my questions.
Not content to rest on their laurels, this third generation of Pipers are already preparing for future challenges.
Today, with all the architectural work, you've got radiuses and circles and changes in particularly in materials, and some of it are really not compatible with roofing. So it's difficult out there now to do some of this detailing work.
The principles are still there that had existed for 100 years or so. Only the assembly or the installation is somewhat different. Probably the newest thing is related to energy conservation. Sustainability has always been important for us. We feel like we've done a great deal with sustainability. The roof on our building is 52 years old, which people are now interested in how long a roof will last rather than how cheap can I get out.
Piper Roofing remains a Greenville institution. The list of companies benefiting from their skills is a veritable who's who of the upstate. But perhaps the greatest testament to their impact in the community lies in one building. Joe Piper worked on the original construction of downtown's Poinsett Hotel, and when it was renovated decades later, Piper Roofing once again worked on the roof, bookending a century's worth of quality and integrity.
Well, I think that my grandfather, when he started the business, his first thing in the forefront was quality. And I think that was passed down to his three sons through the years. It's been passed down to Roddy and I now, and we look at that we want to be the best out there.
Ted's feeling was that he was a roofer, and he was called to be a roofer. And he felt that if he was called to be a roofer, he was going to be a good one.
It's been my desire, Joe's desire, those of us that continue to be involved with it, to simply carry forward the standards, the morals, the desire to make the community, to leave the community in a better position by our involvement. That's far more important to us than just what is in it for me. And we've sought to continue that in respect to those that went before us, and with the belief that concern for the community and the business that we're in will return back to us, and to see that it still stands for the same things that the company has in the past and today too. We've made a lot of changes in methodology and materials, and seen some performance improvements, but the basic tenets of good business is still there.